That's why I say good morning to the entire Tri-Island this morning. Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique. Good Monday morning. It's the start of another work week for a vast majority of us. Yeah, there are those of us who don't go the entire 7 days, but for a majority, we start work on a Monday. So good morning to those of you who are on the JOB. Good morning to you and welcome to another edition of To The Point for today. Once again, Monday. Our viewers via GBN TV, good morning, whether it's Channel 7, Channel 11 or Channels 20. Good morning to you. Those of you via our social media platform who are viewing and listening there also. When I say listening, they're probably who are listening to our online stream per se. Let me say good morning to you. Those of you that's via gbn.gd, I want to say good morning to you. Those of you via our Facebook page who are viewing and listening, good morning to you. Let's say good morning also to those of you via our YouTube channels. Let me say good morning and welcome. Let me say good morning to my co-host this morning as usual. Every Monday you're going to find me and this individual here. Let me say good morning to you. Sylvan, how are you doing this morning, sir?
Oh, I'm good, GT. Pleasant good morning to you. Hope you had a good weekend.
Weekend was all right. Pretty, I would say. Pretty restful one for me, per se.
Right.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you need that rest, eh?
Yeah.
And, you know, with all the little rain we were having in between and so forth, I took the opportunity to get some rest.
You know, rain has its own way of adding a particular type of feeling over the human, whether it is us in the Caribbean or elsewhere. But once there's rain, we tend to go into a different mode. It's either rest, relaxation, or maybe internal recreation. You know,
I agree.
Rain can do.
Yeah,
you know,
it brings in a sort of mood into you, mood into you, and you know, and sometimes it's a good feeling.
Yes,
there's nothing wrong about having a good feeling when rain.
Absolutely, but for us in emergency and disaster preparedness, we would understand what that means when it's raining and when you have tropical depressions that are being formed and when you have tropical waves that are coming across and when you have areas of disturbed weather, especially if you are in what is now the hurricane season.
It's a worrying mood.
It's a worrying mood. And so despite we've been having rain over the years and tropical storms and we've been having depressions, people tend to become overly concerned once they hear the thunder.
Yeah.
The lightning, I know it's kind of scary for some people and the thunder itself, but rain is something that is welcome. Yep. Now that we are even closer to the full moon, I think full moon could be like a day or two away. The farmers would tell you it's a good time, and the moon, the changing of the moon always bring, especially the full moon, would bring some rain, and that is very welcome as well.
That's good. You know, Sylvan, for the last 2 or 3 sessions, I guess this is our third session, most likely our third session. Is it?
I think that's a fourth.
It's a fourth.
Yeah,
man. I'm losing track of time.
Yes.
Anyway, we've been focusing a lot on of course, you know, the risk management. We spend a lot of time talking about that. We spend a lot of time in terms of emergency preparedness. We spend a lot of time talking about that. We focus a lot on, you know, the common injuries and emergencies that may occur. We spend a lot of time focused on that. And interesting conversation every time we do this on a Monday. Today's program, we wanna, you know, spend a little time on the emergency care. Say, yes. You know, treatment of shock burns. We're going to spend time in featuring each of these incidents when they do occur. Yes. We're going to spend some time. And callers, we also invite you to call in. Probably you had for instance, you had of course, you maybe they had the instance where they experience
that you want to share,
and you want to share, or you saying, hey, next time around, I want to know what to do.
Absolutely,
that could help, you know, save an individual's life. So
I love that angle.
You understand? Yes. Mm-hmm. So if you have that experience and you want to call in. Your phone calls will be certainly welcome, Sylvan. Once it's, you know, I think he should be able to answer you along that line.
Absolutely.
He should be able to answer you along that line. Yeah. And your phone calls will certainly be welcome. All right.
So before we actually cracking into today's program, I think we started our programs with some things that are trending, whether it's locally or internationally or sometimes regionally. We recognize that's what's happening now. We had the regional security system here, yes. The RSS. They're celebrating 40 years since they came to being when the first treaty was signed here in Grenada. So what I saw over the weekend was quite a number of the security chiefs here. Commissioners of police, chief of defense, and so on. That came in just around the time when Grenada was very unstable in terms of insurrection. We had in 1979, then we had in 1983, and just before the U.S. intervention, we had this treaty of the RSS where the Caribbean forces were able to come together to form that treaty. So if any country in the region is affected, that they can go in, the officers can become special constables, and that they would have rights in law to enforce law in particular countries. So they're celebrating 40 years here in Grenada. So that is something that is also trending. I saw them in Grand Dance yesterday. They had the parade, short parade, and the guys were decked off in their military attire, looking really good and so forth. It made me feel like, just picking up my arms again, which is really cool. But there comes a time when you got to give way.
You got to put it up and give it away. Not give it away literally, but just give it up and have it there. Probably as a bit of a showpiece for them. Sometimes.
And having said so, I think it's going to be significant because I'm handing the baton to one of my sons, who is in the U.S. military Air Force as well. He's based in Germany. Once I step out, he said I was his influence for wanting to do that. He's doing pretty fine. So there comes the legacy of people wanting to serve country, as I'm continuing to do for some time.
Great.
And locally trending as well, Mr. Dr. Terence Walters. Yeah, he was appointed National Disaster Coordinator. We want to say congratulations. I think that is in place.
Yes, certainly in place to say that.
We want to say that to the National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, and to give Mr. Walters. I'm sure he's going to get the fullest of support, and he's no stranger to GBN as well.
And I was just about to say he's actually no stranger to dealing with disaster management also.
No, I worked with him before as well.
He's no stranger to dealing with that. I certainly remember him, maybe not in the position he's at now, but he is no stranger being part of disaster management.
So he's well rounded technically. He has a health background, MPH in health. He has his degree and his PhD in policy and management, etc. He went on. He was the national coordinator deputy in the Turks and Caicos for a little bit, and he's responded with a number of incidences. He was with me in BVI in 2018. That was.
This was Hurricane Maria.
2017, Irma and Maria. 2017, 2018, 2019. 2019 was we had the Bahamas, but he definitely was in the BVI, worked along with so he's responding to a number of things. So the Sidima family, he's no stranger to them as well. So we want to wish him all the best in his second stint. He acted in that position before. He was deputy and acted as coordinator before, so he's no stranger to them. I'm sure that he would serve the nation well. So I think on behalf of all of us, myself as an individual, and I'm sure we can say on behalf of the GBN as well.
Congratulations.
Wish him best.
Certainly NAGMA is in good hands once again, man. No problem. Certainly no problem with
absolutely.
No problem with that. And we saw Cuba get a little bit ahead for the weekend. Not Cuba, but Venezuela per se. Venezuela per se got a little bit ahead over the weekend.
Right. Flooding and landslides and so, which again cost a number of lives. Folks, we are saying this because emergencies and so forth, they're becoming very, very, let's say, just a local popular sort of. They happen very frequently and not very far from us. Venezuela is one of our very close neighbors, our allies technically. We deal with them. We have very good relationship bilateral, I think, with them. And so there are even Grenadians who are Venezuelans and Venezuelans who are Grenadians, are married and all that. So we do have a close relationship. So when our neighbors are having problems, we need to see, again, as we mentioned in our last program, how it affects us indirectly and how we can lend support to them. I'm sure we know quite a number of Venezuelans on island. As a matter of fact, the institute here has been doing a fine job. I did a bit of my Espanol with them as well. Habla Espanol poquito. So I want to say again, hats off to them and wish them all the best in recovering from the events of those landslides and the flooding that they're experiencing. So today,
let's get into today's topic today.
So which are the first one
we want to kick it off? Let's kick it off with the emergency care.
Right.
Emergency care.
So emergency care and treatment. It is something that everyone should possibly get to know. They should understand the basic things in dealing with emergency care and treatment. We established before on our programs that the initial assistance given to anyone, it is critical as to whether or not they're going to recover or the situation going to become worse, or as a matter of fact, whether you can promote some level of recovery, and that is critical. We also did mention on the point before that first aid and having a first aid kit and having someone in the home trained trained to give that emergency care that is critical. Now, emergency care does not relate to a practitioner or someone who belongs to an institution. In that sense, you do have people who are trained to give emergency care as part of their profession, as part of what they are paid to do. But emergency care could be given by just about anyone in any part of the globe, and it is so more important where you have what I call the informal sector. The informal sector are those persons within the community who do not belong to any particular grouping, organized or otherwise, but they would need to render some form of emergency care. And as it is widely established that once you are able to do that, it prevents a condition from becoming worse. It impacts positively on the care that the second aiders and the health facilities, hospitals can give. If we do have more of that, more information as to the emergency care, we are sure that it becomes less of a burden on the national coffers. Because if people's situation is not going to the extent where they have to spend some time at the hospitals or the medical centers, you hear the nurses at times speaking of a number of persons who may not necessarily need to go to the hospital. They can go to the local health centers or the polyclinics that they may have. And in some instances, some injuries, if you know how to treat them, you don't necessarily need to end up in a health center or medical clinic for that matter.
Let me ask you this. When could someone determine that the care that they're going to be offering to someone gets to a stage of an emergency?
That's a very good question. Now, if people are trained, for me, and a number of persons who have been trained, we understand what can worsen a situation and what basic care that one can give that you don't necessarily need to take it further. But for the average person who don't know, the first thing that you'd want to be able to do, if there is an injury, if there is someone in an emergency, the first thing you want to do is to contact the A&E or hospital or a professional who would advise on the situation. They may tell you what you can do to treat it, so you don't necessarily have to come forward with it. They may tell you if this situation goes to a certain particular level, then you may need to come in. And I think more and more people, if you are trained and you become more aware of as to what these injuries are, you could understand if you do the right thing in time that it doesn't have to get further and a medical center may not require it. However, the word of caution is, if in doubt, leave it out. If you're not trained to do anything and you do not understand it, it may be better to be safe than sorry. Report or visit. Get a doctor's advice. Especially, we did speak about the silent killer, a contusion. We spoke about the bumps and so on that people would get. And that contused wound that is also called a bruise leads to death. And some people take it for granted. It's simple. I just get a fall, I bounce my head, the person met an accident, and there's a little rising somewhere, there's a little dark spot, and they would just say, let's just rub it, let's just put some ice, and it would go away. But these, in long term, you'd find that they end up becoming aneurysm, hematoma, or what you call sometimes a blood clot in those areas, and they can lead to a total blockage of one of the blood vessels. That might be critical, one of the arteries that might be very critical. It becomes narrowed, and over time, it gets blocked because that bleeding on the inside becomes so severe and it hardens, so it prevents the blood from moving from one point to the other. In such a case, the person may experience a high blood pressure, they may end up having a mild stroke in some cases, or maybe a severe stroke, and it can end their lives just because of that simple contused wound that they may have gotten. And I did say, as a word of caution, generally, once someone has fallen, they get some bumps or otherwise, they need to have it assessed.
So you're saying that in cases of that nature, individuals should just never let it be or let it slide.
Never let it slide. And again, this is a repeat on the program that we're saying this because it is critically important. I spoke of the pediatrics and the geriatrics and so on in homes where people sometimes, by no fault of theirs, they happen to slip, they happen to fall because they are incapacitated in some way or the other. Their mobility is limited, and they happen to fall or knock somewhere. And some people may tend to, that's just a little bump. Yeah. And especially if it's a younger child, the healing process obviously would be much quicker, but they are very fragile, so that can lead to death. And with the older person, they too are very vulnerable because the healing process would be a lot slower. And so in both cases, it can lead to more serious injuries, or it can lead to fatalities. So we do not want to take chance with that. And this is one of the reasons why we chose on this program today to expand on some of the emergencies that people may come across. We would speak about them in detail as much as we could, so that people understand the process. An expansion of what we want to say here at GT. We had a feedback indicating that there would be need for us to demonstrate some of these things. I did have a feedback, and I thought that was well. And I did say we're going to create some recordings.
All right.
So while we are speaking on the program, we can actually show people what they should do. Particularly when we're speaking about the CPR, the rescue breaths, and the chest compression. When we're speaking about how do you stabilize a wound, maybe an incision, a laceration, or a fracture, a strain, or a sprain, as we're going to speak about later on, what you need to do. There are people who would understand, and I think I speak very simple, down to earth. Some people may understand, but I think just like a demonstration or a picture may paint many words, I think that is also useful. So as we expand on this program, we'll have more demonstration. We're beginning to get the feedback that this is meaning a lot to people, but I think demonstrations and visuals would help.
Exactly, because folks getting that visual effect of it, Oscar. You speaking about it, some folks may understand.
Yes.
Some folks, even as you said, you speak in very layman terms, so folks may get it. But sometimes given that visual effect, how it's actually done, to make an individual understand where you're coming from. Let's take a break. We're coming back with more this morning, folks. Here, myself and Sylvan, we're talking emergency care, treatments, etc. Folks, we're coming back with much more for you. Stay with us here on To The Point.
It's the big one. Grenada. Imagine winning $25,000 and up to 6 times by scratching just one lotto ticket. Get your triple cash scratch tickets for a chance to live your best life. Win easy with Scratch. For just $3, match any of your numbers to any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown for that number. Reveal a money back symbol and win the prize instantly. Triple cash scratch. In stores now. Must be 18 or older to play.
Cause I'm a winner. From the moment that I get up, I'm feeling right.
The most anticipated event to end 2022 is here. The 12th edition of the Wagiti Super Knockout Football Championship starts on Saturday, 15th October at the Victoria Park, Grenville. It's 2 big opening games. From 7 p.m. Game 1, 5 Stars St. Andrew versus St. David's United. 9 p.m. Game 2, Moncton Sports Club versus Sunsetter Sports Club. Then after the games, we head stateside for the young and upcoming trending Jamaican artists. 450. 450. Alongside Vanessa Bling.
One man, give me good loving, yeah.
The Octane Band and top local artists Letneck, Mr. Wacky, and Brighter Store. Admission only $40. For all this action, the 12th edition of the Wagiti Super Knockout is on. Don't miss a game.
So we'll be back with you. Good morning once again to our listeners and viewers. To the point for today, Monday, we have Mr. Sylvan McIntyre inside with us this morning. And you know, folks, he's here. And of course, talking with me pertaining to disaster risk reduction, emergency preparedness, response, and so forth. And we talking about that. And you know, he's here in his individual capacity as a disaster risk reduction and emergency response expert. And we speaking in this morning pertaining to emergency care and treatments. Let's go to treatment, Sylvan, in this segment this morning. Once again, callers, you have the option of, as we speak about the various topics this morning, you have the option of calling in and then asking questions pertaining to what we're speaking about. You're certainly welcome to do so. If you do have an experience, as we mentioned before, you experience what, an incident where you had to offer emergency care. You may not have been an expert in it, but you were able to do from the little knowledge that you have of it, and you may have helped an individual, or it may have even saved a life. So if you want to share that experience, you certainly will welcome that as the program goes through this morning. Already see a caller coming in, but we will entertain your callers. Give us another 5 or 6 minutes after we wrap this segment, and then we probably start taking your phone calls. All right.
And GT, I want to also say to the caller and callers, the key word here is question specific to what we
speak with this morning. All right. We're talking emergency care treatments, for somebody may have had a shock,
and that's what we're going to.
A burn, etc., fractures, strains, sprains, and these things are along that line.
Yes.
Your phone calls will be welcome towards that. Let's go to the point of treatments.
Yeah.
I want you to expand for the viewing and listening public, for folks who may not understand treatments.
Yeah. So treatment does not confine itself to medication, and sometimes people think that you have to have medication, and medication itself does not have to be in prescribed tablets or liquid form, as the case may be. Medication could be a therapy, it could be mental or otherwise, anything that is given towards the treatment of an injury, whether it's a mental illness or otherwise. It's a form of medication. So some people, that's an expansion of it, a simple term for it. So people tend to believe if there is no tablets given or there is no other prescribed liquid form medications or powder, it is not medicine, and they cannot treat someone. So we want to make that clear, that everyone could do something.
Treatment is not always medication.
Medication, absolutely. Right. So the treatment, we need to know what we're treating first and foremost, and how to identify it. One of the more common things that one will come across is something called shock. And I'm speaking about not electric shock, but shock in the sense where you have different kinds of shock. Shock relates to what you call perfusion. Now, perfusion means the amount of fluid or liquid that the body requires to function properly. When you have lack of perfusion, it means that there is insufficient fluid or liquid in the body for it to function properly. And it doesn't have to be only blood. So once the body loses too much fluid or in excess of a particular amount of fluid, it would go into a state of shock. So someone bleed for an extensive period of time, they lose a particular amount of blood, and I will come into that a little bit later. If they sweat too much, they become dehydrated. If they vomit, they urinate, or some cause. Once excessive fluid exits the body, one can go into a state of shock, and some experts would tell you that shock is the last stage before somebody actually dies. And there are ways you can identify the signs and the symptoms of someone going into shock. Now, as I mentioned, signs and symptoms, there's a difference between the two. Signs are the things that you can see, you can feel, you can smell them. Now, symptoms are the things that a person would relate to you as the doctor or the health provider. So you cannot see symptoms. So the doctors would make the diagnosis, and I guess you're getting information.
I'm getting.
So the doctors would, or the physicians would make the decision based on the symptoms, what you relate to them. So when you go to a doctor, they will say, talk to me. Tell me how you feel.
I got a headache. I'm feeling a pain.
That's correct. Because you as GT cannot see the headache.
Exactly.
But the person say, the doctor may expand. How is it very severe? Is it at the left or the right side or that case? So they would want to, and they will say to you, express what you are feeling and exactly. So they begin to make the diagnosis. Now the signs would be what they're seeing. They're seeing that your eye looks sort of weak, your skin look kind of a pale, discolored. Actually,
they're trained to look for these signs.
To look for these signs, and they will determine what's the problem. So what I want to do is to let people know how you can identify when somebody goes into a state of shock. Now, when somebody loses blood in particular, they would go into a type of shock which is called hypovolemic shock, and that's the more common one that you'd hear the news people would speak about all the time, or the doctors may relate to as cause of death. So somebody gets a puncture, they get a cut, and they bleed. It's because they would die of hypovolemic shock. And hypovolemic, hyper means high, hypo means a low stage, and volemic sounds like volume. So technically, it's inadequate amount of blood to keep the organs alive. So a person would go into that state of shock. What are the signs and symptoms of shock? How do I know that somebody is going into shock? The skin will become pale, cold, clammy, what you call a cold sweat. They become sometimes aggressive. They may have an altered mental status, meaning that they may start speaking things that is not
kind of disoriented a bit.
Disoriented. They sometimes complain of being thirsty. The pupil gets dilated, and sometimes they feel nauseated. They feel like they want to throw up or they want to vomit. That will say to you that that person is going into a state of shock. Now, when you recognize a person exhibiting 3 or more of these symptoms, you definitely know that they are deteriorating and something further can happen to them. Yeah. So what do I do then if I see these things are happening? The first thing one needs to do is to treat the cause of the shock. Now, you understand that once somebody loses blood, the body becomes cold. Anybody or a body that is becoming cold is not a good sign, because blood needs a particular temperature, I think it's 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit, to stay in circulation as the average heat that a person would generate through the body. A person loses most of the heat through the head and feet. So anybody who becomes cold in any particular situation, what you want to do is you want to ensure first and foremost that you cover the head and feet. If you visit one of the hospitals or so, you'll recognize that the nurses, they would walk along, and sometimes they put one of those thermometers on the person's arm and so on behind different areas to test them. And in some cases, they would use the back of the hand to rest on the forehead, or they would just touch under the feet. Now, what they're doing, they're actually checking part of the vital signs to ensure that the temperature level is as such that doesn't become of too much a concern. So if somebody is exhibiting that kind of a symptoms and signs, you need to ensure that you first treat the cause of what may be the shock in that instant. So if a person is bleeding, you want to ensure that you restrict the bleeding, you control that. If the person is cold, as I indicated, you try to warm them up. And a good way as well is to put them lying. Elevate the legs slightly above the level of the heart, because you understand the flow of the blood and all of that. It aids. Nowadays, I think recent survey has said that there might be not so much connection with how the heart would pump the blood, but the old treatment which still works. If you put someone lie down, if you understand circulation takes place when the heart is pumping, it pumps and it goes down, but when you have the muscles contracting and squeezing, etc., it helps when the blood gets to the lower extremity to make its way back up towards the heart, etc. Okay. So that theory, when somebody is put to lie down and their feet elevated, tend to aid circulation a lot easier. So you want to put the person lying, elevate the legs and so forth, and ensure that they are kept warm. And one of the things that's always cautioned, listen to me really carefully, listener, you do not give anyone water or any drink by mouth, because the organs would be failing. The lungs and the other digestive system will not be functioning, so you do not want to give anything by mouth. What is a safer thing to do, like the rich man and Lazarus, he said, dip the finger tip of the finger in water and just pass it across the lip. That's all you need to do. The only other process of inducing fluid into the person's body is what they call through the IV. So the medics or the paramedics or the nurses may come and they would give what people call drips. That's the only thing that where you want something to go through the body.
Because, from time to time you do hear when instance like that happens and, someone gets into shock, as you say, and regular people will say, give him some water.
Yes.
Give him some water to drink. Someone falls and hit their head or something in the sun, they will say, give them some water. So you were saying from a professional part of these things, you don't do that.
No, you don't do that. And if you are a trained professional where you do have the training and license that you could perform other things, you're all free to do that. If you're just a regular person, you're not advised to give anyone any kind of medication or to induce any form of food or liquid into their system. Right. That is definitely prohibited, because you can aid to the deterioration of that condition, and that's clear enough. I think we can take the caller. Yeah,
well, the caller has left, but of course they can always call us back. We start taking some calls in the segment. I just want to ask you one thing that you can expand on a wee bit. We just spoke in terms of treatment for shocks. What about treatments for someone who's gotten burned or burns per se?
Yes.
Whether it's is a minor. I guess there are different stages where someone gets burned. if you can expand on that just a wee bit. I think we do have a caller. Let's see what this caller has to say. You could probably grab the headphones, Sylvan. Yeah, that will probably aid in terms of you hearing what the caller have to say much easier. Caller, good morning. How are you?
Morning, I'm good. I'm very good. I'm always, excited when two of you are on the radio.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, first of all, I want to use this opportunity to commend the government for taking the step of filling the position of the National Disaster Coordinator in the person of Mr. Dr.
Terence Walters.
I think it's a very good step in the right direction, because we need to have some kind of governance. Things need to be managed more prudent. We need to be more proactive. So that was good. In the case of today, GT and Sylvan, today is World Mental Health Day.
Okay.
I would like you to talk a little about the whole thing of disaster, emergency, so in the context of people of the mentally ill or the mentally challenged.
Okay.
Could you say something towards that? Because I was on a program last week at Columbia University, and it would be very, very far away from even beginning to think about how do we respond to the situation. For instance, and even on your program last week, GT, a woman called.
Yes, was it on Friday? I did have a guest who spoke about.
She was fed up. She couldn't handle this son of hers, because every time she had to call the police. How do we respond if something happens, like somebody go berserk? How do we respond? Do we get in panic and so on, or something else? So maybe, Sylvan, you could just say something on that subject. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, caller.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, interesting question, because I did have a guest. Was it on Friday? Who speak of being bipolar.
Right.
I mean, it's good that she had the urge to come out and speak for herself.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
And and then what he alluded to was a caller that called in and referenced that she have a son who goes into time, gets this, could we say, goes off, let's say.
Yeah.
And in terms of how to deal with him has always been a problem. So she was saying maybe there could be groups within the community that could be made or make these groups or come together that can help parents per se, or the family per se, deal with situation like that when they do arise. You understand?
Yes.
We do have another caller. Let's entertain another caller. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
We doing okay.
Yes. Now, in my opinion, I saw that my great-grandparents, long ago, they used plenty saffron when people get wounded. So I just try to confirm that saffron could remove bad blood.
So we're going to come to that.
All right, caller. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. You know, these old remedies that you're saying, sometimes they are not for the purpose of what it is. It may work and may not work.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes. So on one of our programs, we did speak about using home remedy and some of these things and so forth. And if you don't use anything, you can't be blamed for anything. And one thing may work for a particular situation. It may not necessarily work for another. So while saffron and aloe vera, these kind of things, they do have the natural healing properties. We are quite aware of that, and other things. They have to be administered in particular quantities, and while they may have some positive, they could have negatives as well. But there are people through tradition and otherwise may even become versed in using particular quantities. I cannot give you the right on this program to go ahead and do that, and I am advising and informing people who are just lay, who just want to understand how to treat something in an emergency situation, how to deal with it. So in other cases, you will have to have things prescribed by a doctor to know how to treat. So I would not on this program authorize anyone to use any form of thing, even if in some cases they have worked in the past. Okay. I think that is enough to explain the use of anything else, because when I was young, I know they use saffron, all these things when you have a sprain, and so they would rub it with corn stick and all of that, and so on. Whether that is what was working otherwise is another question.
And some folks may have experienced some form of relief from using these things, but not sometimes. But I just said there's no expert proof on it per se.
Yes.
Even though there is sometimes it's still limited in terms of the study that was done. Probably there was no extensive study done on these things for us to go in detail pertaining to that. So I guess we are not along that line.
And one of the common injuries that we're going to speak about is that of burns, and we know people trying to use quite a number of different things when somebody gets a burn, and we would want to put that into its context later on when we start speaking. Do we have a caller?
No, we don't have a caller.
Oh,
so we can, and as you said, the caller coming, so I guess you're alert to the caller to call. But let's just take this caller, and then we get into speaking about burns. We do have a couple of course, topics that we want to expand.
That's correct.
And time is, running us, know, like that.
Good.
Caller, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Go right ahead, caller. Go right ahead.
Well, what I'm saying, I just heard a person call and talk about using the turmeric. That's the saffron. And I will say I had an experience where someone had fallen off a scaffold. And there was an old lady close by, gave him some salt, butter mixed with turmeric, and then asked him to go to the hospital in Cardiff to see the doctor. And the person went there. He went so long, couldn't see a doctor. He came back home and he boiled the same turmeric, and he was fine after.
All right, caller. Thank you for your contribution.
The saffron, it do work.
All right. Thank you for your contribution this morning, caller.
All
right. Well, as I said, some folks may have good experience from these things, but not everybody may have the same. Sylvan, let's expand before we take our another break. Expand on the of course treatment for burns per se. Expand on that a wee bit before we grab another caller this morning.
Yeah, and we need to understand the context as to what exactly is a burn. So a burn is any injury that is caused through excessive heat that is beyond the level that the body normally would require for normal function. And it is either caused by chemical, it can be caused by water, it could be caused by gas or some form of fume. Now burns come in categories as well. So there is category 1, number 2, and number 3. All right. So number 1 is where the skin is basically just discolored slightly. Where people just say you just get a little.
So they say that's a first degree burn.
First degree burn. Yes. The second degree means then that it goes past the epidermis, gets into the dermis, etc., and it just borders getting into the tissue. So that in itself is a little bit deeper than the first degree. The third degree burn is one where it is so deep that it goes into the tissues, and in some cases it reaches or exposes the bones in some case. Now, treatment for burns really is exactly what it is. The opposite to burn is to cool. So the first treatment for burn is to cool. So if you just have like a first degree where, for instance, hot water may have just what you call it, just a scald or the steam on the epidermis, what you want to do is to first put cold water, regular water, and you can increase the temperature as the case. When I say increase, you decrease meaning that you make it colder by adding either ice to it, so that you lower the burning, you decrease the burning process. And that is, so when someone gets a first degree burn, all you need to do, the first application is to ensure that you pour water on it, and you can make the water colder as the burn tend to increase. The same application is required when someone gets a second degree burn. You want to be able to cool that. What one doesn't want to do is to make too much a drastic step in terms of somebody just get a burn and you want to just put a set of ice on it or just put extremely cold water on it immediately. That process must be gradated, meaning that you would start with regular temperature water and then you make it a bit colder, and you do that 15 to 20 minutes, or as long as the person is continuing to feel that burning effect, you would keep that cooling on and off for a period of time until the process on the body begins to feel quite normal. What happens in this case is that you decrease inflammation from coming into the area. Once inflammation or liquid is decreased or fluid is decreased or reduced from coming into the area, there's less chance of the area becoming totally inflamed. And so once you cool that down, you would find that the blisters and so on and the swelling, you're going to decrease the likeliness of that happening. In most cases, if people do it immediately, in some cases, the what you call the water plugs or those bumps, they don't appear at all. So for a burn, the first thing you want to do is to ensure that you cool it down. Note well, do not apply flour. Do not put anything like toothpaste. People put lard and butter or grease, petroleum jelly, or all these things, and they put them over burns. That is not advice. The only thing that you're required to do is to cool it down with regular temperature water or water as cold as possible, that the body can take it at the time that you are administering it. So what persons have seen, there is a particular cream that is called a burn cream. They often placed, they sometimes are in first aid kit, or they are administered at the accident and emergency or at hospitals, or where you have burn units. There's a particular cream for that. So persons may have seen that kind of a cream in the past. They may have seen that on wound, and they think it could be Vaseline, they think it could be butter or something of that sort, and they would apply that. In some cases, people may say, well, we've done that in the past, it has worked. My advice to you from a technical point of view and from the expert, that you do not apply these things on burns. And putting the flour and all kind of other powders and so on, that is not encouraged. You would want to do anything thereafter that the person visits a doctor and something is prescribed for it. Once you have a third-degree burn, it means that is pretty serious. You do not want to go there then and try to submerge that area into water. What one has to do, that's a critical case, that's a rush case, and in all cases what you want to do, whether you are going to be applying any first aid treatment, if you are trained or not trained, the first thing to do is to activate the emergency system. Have someone make a call, or you make a call yourself. You might get further advice on it, or let somebody know what you are doing at the time. But you don't want to be sitting there waiting for the availability of an ambulance or transportation while the person is deteriorating. So in a case where a person has a serious burn, a third-degree burn, what you want to do is to also help to slow down the burning process. You would want to cut the clothes and things that it might be stuck into that area, free it up a bit, and we want to put what is called a loose sterile dressing over that is moist, so that you just keep the area basically cool. You want to protect it from invading bacteria, etc., so that the person can be transported immediately to the hospital or the care unit.
All right. Thank you so much. Folks, we're going to take a break inside this segment. We're coming right back. 15 minutes moving up before the top of the hour this morning. It's To The Point for today, Monday. We're coming right back with more information for you on To The Point.
Don't miss the new season of Interesting Grenadians on GBN TV and social media platforms from Wednesday, October 12th at 8 p.m. and every Wednesday until November 9th, featuring the Anya Chow Chung story, the Richard Duncan story, and lots more. It's Interesting Grenadians, celebrating our interesting and outstanding Grenadians at home and abroad. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on GBN, beginning October 12th. You won't want to miss it.
Mingle and Jingle coming soon to all GBN platforms.
Why pay full price for your mobile when you can pay half? Just bundle your home internet and mobile services with Flow and save 50% on your mobile bill. That's money in your pockets every month. Plus now you get free YouTube and WhatsApp data. And you can share your plan with up to 3 other numbers. Upgrade now and get a free smartphone. Switch and keep your number. Learn more at discoverflow.co.
The National Insurance Scheme continues to make it easy to access our services using the MyNIS online platform. Now we're introducing a new feature that allows you to submit your benefit claims from the convenience of your smart devices. No paper, no hassle. All you have to do is log in to my.nisgrenada.org. Select claims, fill out the relevant information, and click submit. We'll take it from there. It's that simple and that easy. Submit a claim from the comfort of your home as you rest and recuperate. Enjoy the convenience of faster claim processing and monitor the status of your claim every step of the way. We are excited to introduce this new feature to better serve you. NIS is changing the game and the way you make your claim. Access anywhere and anytime with MyNIS Online.
Welcome back, our listeners and viewers this morning. We invite the final segment of To The Point for today. And we've been speaking about emergency care treatment for shocks. And our final topic that we had a while ago was burns. Now, we want to get into, Sylvan, I want to get into fractures, sprains, strains, sprain and strain. They sound familiar, but they're, of course, two different things altogether. Yeah. Let's expand on that a wee bit in terms of the overall treatment for especially sprains and strains.
Right. So we are going to speak about fractures, strains, sprains, and we're also going to touch a little bit on dislocations because they do have similarity in terms of the treatment.
Okay.
So
before we move, let's take this one caller.
Yeah.
Because they've been calling it for a while, and then we'll be getting to it. Caller, good morning to you, and be a bit short in terms of your comment, please. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll be short. The subject is there's a homeless guy who is walking around with all his penis and his bottom out. I called the
caller. Good morning.
Yeah,
our topic of conversation this morning is not on that particular nature,
yeah,
so we
no,
will
but
not
I'd
be.
Like to
but
get it out
caller, we have to do that at another time. Okay, thank you so much. That's not really what we focusing on this morning. We probably entertain that another time. Let's go right ahead.
And the caller can call one of the police station or something in the meantime.
To that.
Yes, please. So we're speaking about fractures, strains, and sprain. And a fracture is basically a crack or a break in a bone. And there are two categories. They may either be internal or external, exposed or closed. When you have an open fracture, it means that the skin is broken and you may have a protruding bone and so on. In other cases, if you have a fracture that occur or a break in a bone that occur, you may not necessarily see a bone protruding, but you can see there is some level of deformity. You can see swelling in the area, see some level of discoloration happening, so you can understand that that person has a fracture. Now we're going to speak about strains and sprains and treatment for all of them in the same vein. So when we're speaking about strains, we are speaking basically of muscles. So once a muscle is overly extended or it is partially torn, the injury then is called a strain. So strain has to deal with muscles. Now we're speaking about sprain. Sprain has to do with ligaments. So once a ligament becomes overly extended or stretched to the point where it gets torn, that process is called a sprain. So you may sprain your ankle, but you may strain your back.
Okay.
Right? You may strain the muscle. You may have as the people say, a hamstring muscle or the hamstring and so on. All right? You will strain that because that has to deal with muscle. When we speak about dislocation, we are speaking about bone or so coming apart from the joints. So you may have damage to the tissues. You may have damage to the ligaments there as well. You may have bruising that may take place in that area. You may have bleeding that may occur. So all of these require some level of treatment. So let's go back to those injuries as to how we can treat them. We know what they are now and how we can recognize them. So once there is a fracture, there is likely to be some bleeding. The bleeding could be internal. So as I mentioned before, the area could be dark, painful or otherwise. Once you suspect somebody has a fracture, if it is an open fracture where the bone is protruding and it's bleeding, you want to be able to put a sterile dressing or any clean dressing that you may have to restrict the amount of blood loss. So you want to not cause the person to go on to bleed because, as we indicated before, that person could go into a state of shock. Right. You want to be able to put a dressing over that and put a bandage there to control the bleeding. Now, once you want to move the person or treat the person for a period of time, the fracture has to be stabilized, the process we call stabilizing, and that can be done by what you call splinting. So a splint is any solid material that you can use to wrap around the area that might be fractured or broken so that you immobilize in the position as you meet it. So there are some situations where people try to pull and push bones back in the area and pull and push joints. You're not advised to do that. It's not recommended. What you need to do is to get something solid, like a piece of ruler if it's a small fracture, or maybe a finger that might be dislocated from the joint, you just use that solid thing and you wrap it around so that it doesn't dangle or move around. If it is the hand, you can get a piece of stick, you can get an umbrella, you can get a book, a piece of board, you wrap around it just to keep it firm.
Just in terms of stability, just to
stabilize it,
keep it stable,
so that it doesn't move wild all over the place to make the injury worse and create further bleeding on the inside, and you can have that person go to the emergency. All of the injuries that we speak about, there's a process, a little phrase that we use, mnemonic RICE, RICE. So the process of treating any fresh injury, the first thing that you want to do is to ensure that you control the bleeding if there is bleeding, or to ensure that you cool the entire process of bleeding from the area. So RICE means that you advise the person or put them to rest, get the injured area. If it's a leg or a foot, you want to ensure that the person is asked, or you have them to rest it. So R is for rest. The next one, I, is for ice. So you would get some ice, because what you want to do is to cool that area down. Because once blood or fluid is coming into the area, it brings pressure. Once it brings pressure, pressure brings on pain. Pain and pressure create some level of inflammation and swelling. Now, if you reduce that process by cooling it down early, you reduce the amount of fluid from coming in there. You know, when people speak about bleeding, they said when your blood warm, it tends to flow more. And obviously the blood has to be warmed at a certain temperature so that circulation will happen properly. If you slow that down, once someone is very cold, the process of circulation is slowed down. So if there is an injury that is bleeding internal or otherwise, once you're able to cool that area down immediately, you slow the process of the amount of blood and fluid building up or coming to that area. So it's going to decrease the time span where it's going to become inflamed. If it becomes inflamed, it becomes painful, and swelling and all this will occur. So once you apply, you get the ice. The next thing, the C, is to compress. So see, you have the ice, not just the bare ice itself, but you place it in a rag or in a package, and you apply it or you compress it in that general area. So you're cooling it down. And a typical example is when you have sports meet or athletics or physical games and so on. Once a footballer or an athlete gets an injury, the first thing he's been asked to do, put them on a stretcher, have them to rest in the room. You get something with ice, and you begin to compress it and so on. So you slow down that process of it becoming inflamed. And the next thing you want to do is the E. So remember we said RICE is to elevate. What we speak about is similar to what we were speaking about when we say that someone goes into a state of shock, or they're going in a suspect shock. You want to put them lie down and you elevate the affected part above the level of the heart. And that would slow the amount of blood from coming or moving into that area. As I indicated before, once it is cooled, then the process of it becoming inflamed is slowed, and you can almost guarantee that the process of healing and the amount of pain that someone would have, if you follow this process of RICE, you could be guaranteed. And let me just explain again. R is for rest, I is for get ice, C is for compress with the ice, and E is to elevate the injured area.
Rice. I have a question from someone on the Facebook page this morning, the comment section, before we, because time is upon us. And the question is, Mr. McIntyre, one of the thing most Grenadians not train is simple CPR, knowing how to save someone in a choking or drowning, also a heart attack, and through panic can cause the death of a person.
Yes.
Can you explain the step by step how can one perform CPR, and how although it's not a topic that we're on this morning per se, but in a few minutes, I guess maybe this may just lead into next week's program.
Yes. Because
this question may just lead into next week's program per se, but maybe you can expand it just a wee bit for the sake of time. Can we just have a few more minutes? Just for about 5
Absolutely.
minutes.
And I like that. And the process of CPR, we were speaking about this morning, a demonstration would be best rather than but I could tell you, just in the event that you have an emergency or otherwise, especially in a near drowning situation, if you pull someone out of the water, what you need to do is to put that person lying down, the head slightly lower than the rest of the body, tilt backward. You squeeze on the nose, give 2 breaths into the mouth, and you find the center of the chest, lock the hands straight out, and you pump on the center of the chest, not the stomach, not the belly, on the chest between the nipple lines or between the breasts where that is located. And what you want to do is to give 30 compression and 2 breaths. So the ratio would be 30 compression and 2 breaths. What we've also found out in the latest application, and COVID has something also to do with that, is that the breath is not absolute now. But if one does the compression, the 30 compression, you can always compensate for that suction that you create when the chest is compressed. You can actually have that process of almost breathing taking place therein as well. Right. So if the person's jaw is affected or injured or otherwise, breath might not be possible. So the compression is critical, because what happens when a person collapses is that the heart is not beating. So what you want to do through the compression is that you actually mimicking the beat of the heart by pressing. And there's a rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3, just like you have the diastolic and the systolic, meaning the up and the lower when the heart beats and so forth. That is exactly what you're doing. You're pressing down at a particular rhythm. And what you're trying to do in CPR is get 100 compression done within a minute. That in itself sets the kind of a rhythm and pace that one needs to go into. So it's not really a rocket science, and that's one of the instruments that you carry with you all the time. Your hands and your mouth. You don't need any other thing to perform CPR, and it is the human life-saving machine. On one of our other programs, we will bring instrument and we will demonstrate properly how to do
Another
that.
question here on the Facebook page is, what is the best treatment someone is asking for someone suffering from cramps?
Cramps. Now, cramps may be brought on by different things. It could be as a result of, you may have a person becoming dehydrated, and in some cases there might be lack of that sodium or otherwise in the substance that they may have used, and the body may have been placed in a particular area where it is restricted, and so it goes into a state of cramp. My limited knowledge has not taught me any specific one treatment for cramp. But one of the things where cramp occurs, it slows down the movement of the muscle. So anything that can be done to relax the muscle would aid most of the time in the relief of cramps. And sometimes people mistake the lack of circulation for cramp, because the body becomes cold, it becomes kind of a stiff or tingly, and people tend to believe, well, they're just coming on with a cramp, whereas they may be suffering because of a lack of proper circulation. So you have to check to figure out whether or not the person's entire body is not constricted from the neck all the way down, so that you can, once you alleviate the process of breathing, that they do not have any difficulty in breathing, and that none of the muscles, they are restricted in circulation, then you know that the person is definitely coming with a cramp. And what you want to do is to have the person relax as much as possible, and you want to seek help from the hospital if it prolongs for a while. Okay,
that's interesting, because from time to time I see people come to me and say, I'm sleeping and I get a cramp.
Yeah.
You understand? Or as you said, it could be because of their posture, how they were lying down, or some other sort that could cause that particular.
Yeah, so if the body or the muscle is caught in it.
So most time it's restriction.
It's restriction
of the flow of blood in that particular area.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to thank you so much for being here this morning. As usual, there's never enough time to talk about all that we need to speak about in the morning time. Just never enough time. We need a 2-hour program.
We definitely need a few more. Yes.
We need 2 hours to do this. I want to thank you for popping in this morning again and sharing your knowledge, and of course, all of that we spoke about this morning and next week. And of course, the question before led to something that we plan on doing for next week. So we hope we could get that off and share more details pertaining to that. Folks seem to have a keen interest in that.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much once again, Sylvan, for popping in this morning. We'll do this again next week, Monday. Every Monday, myself and Sylvan will be here. Once the Almighty permits us health strength, we certainly will be here to tell you more ways, of course, you can treat yourself just in case there's an emergency, any, of course, disaster nature to say that you need to have some, of course, some way or the other of helping someone or yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks, for being part of To The Point for today. Join us again for another program next week, as I said, and join me tomorrow morning for another edition of To The Point. Until then, have yourself a great day, folks. Have a good one. That's where I say goodbye.